Hey guys, I'm so excited to share this with you. Here is my lovely client Vanessa. She has been coming to me for over 2 years. She is like a cousin. I love this girl. This is what her hair looks like before we applied extensions using the Natural Beaded Weft technique. So I actually just did a full foil on Vanessa. And to kind of blend her root a little bit more. It's been a while since she's come in, and so I'm just drying it now, and there's no toner. I haven't applied the toner yet. I like to do that at the end once I applied all the extensions so that it blends better. I'm just parting it into this U-like section, starting above the temples on both sides and bringing it straight back, dipping down a little bit lower towards the back. I like to put my pink clip behind her hair and lift it up to see if I can see really clearly through it. And if I can, then I'm going to make sure I adjust that row a little bit higher. Because if she wants to put her hair up in a ponytail, it'll be really noticeable. So always try and find something really bright or noticeable and test it out by putting it on the hair and lifting up from the front to the back as if she was going to do a high ponytail. If you can see straight through it, super clear, read any words on it, then that is too low or too close to the front. So after parting her hair, I go in with a light hold hairspray to keep all of her flyaways up and out of the way. If you don't take care of those flyaways, what's going to happen is as soon as you start to tighten the hair into the bead, it's going to get caught in there and it's going to rip it out. So you want to make sure you get nice clean sections. So here I'm taking the first section that I am going to bead. I'm using some black beads, and I know it sounds weird because she's blonde, but you want to think about the client's root whenever you go in with beads. You don't want these little bright yellow beads popping out from a dark root, so you want to just match the natural color of the root. You can put those beads on the loop tool. I'm going to leave a link below on all the tools you need to do this method. Those beads are actually amazing. They have silicone in it, so it holds a better grip. You go ahead and I would say like a half an inch section you can take, and here we go, let's get a little closer. A half an inch section you'll take of the hair, and you can clamp the bead down close to the root but flat. You can take half of that first section, put it into the second section, which is also about, I'd say like a half an inch wide. Half of that first section into the second one, and then you clamp it down at a slight angle. The way you keep it flat to the head is you want to make sure that your clamp tool is like laying on your guest's scalp when you're squeezing the bead. If it's like not laying against the scalp, then what's going to happen is it's going to pop straight out, and when she wears her hair down, you're going to see that piece popping out of the hair. So definitely try your best to keep those beads flat at all times. And it's really repetitive. There's a million ways to do this technique. This is my favorite way to do it. I feel more secure when I have that chain of hair in between. So you want to just create a waterfall effect going all the way back to the back of the head. And if I can give you measurements, which I'm not the best at measurements, I should try and measure it the next time. You want to take half an inch sections wide and maybe like a quarter of an inch sections thick. So you don't want it to be really thick hair. If it is, it's not really going to go through that bead, and it's going to probably slide off sooner than later because there's way too much hair in it. So this is what it looks like going back to the back of the head. You want to have a nice waterfall. You take half of one section and you add it into the next bead, and you do that all the way going back. Sometimes if the client's hair is really fine, that first bead I will not do the half section. I will add the whole first section into the second bead. But if it's a little bit thicker, then I definitely want to break it up. You don't want too much hair into that bead. You want to make sure that bead can clamp down nicely so that it avoids slipping down if your client does a lot of conditioner or anything like that. So with this technique, with the hair chain, I do feel like it's more secure. I have more to work with when it comes to sewing the weft on, and I also feel like it's less likely to slip out. So there's some other techniques where they're not really connected to each other and they still work, but I just feel like it's just like less likely to slip out when they're all connected to each other, like your base. So you want to go all the way to the back of the head. And I definitely think that the more beads, the better. You'll hear other people say less points of contact is better, but I do think more beads the better because you have, like I said, more to sew onto, more security, a stronger base, and that's just my opinion on that. It's really repetitive all the way to the back of the head. And like I said, she does not have any toner in her hair, so I'm looking at this like, ooh, I can't wait to tone her hair. It's a little messy. I will post up a video on how I did the foils before we applied this. If you guys really want to see how I did that, let me know in the comments below, so I can upload a video on how I did the foils on her hair before this application. Because I do leave a good amount out of the foils, but definitely want to make sure you get the color done before you apply any type of extensions to anybody's hair. Go ahead and clamp it. And now we're gonna go to the other side. So this is the part where I said you want to do it like a 1/4 of an inch slither all the way to the back, and then about a 1/2 an inch to the other side. So you want to continue to create that waterfall effect, and keep in mind that I did not keep going from that other section all the way around this way. I stopped at the back of her crown, and I started again at this side on the right side, on the top of her temple, going back. So you don't want to make that chain go all the way around, because if you do, at the end of the chain you're going to have one strand left that's going to go straight towards her face, and that's not what we want. We want everything to lie flat and go towards the back of her head and fall naturally with the way her hair grows. Another tip to keep in mind is the way that the beads are angled. The beads are not angled going downward. They're all angled slanted towards the back, or I'd say like perpendicular to the part. And that's what you want when you create this chain effect using the hair, or this waterfall effect using the hair. If you angle it down and then you try and take a piece of that section and add it to the next bead, it's going to create like these little U's throughout the chain, and it's just not neat, it's not tight, and not the way to do it. And so once you get to the end of that section, you're going to have 2 beads going toward each other. If the hair is thick, you want to take half of each section in that bead, half of each little ponytail, and a piece of the hair that you have not touched yet in the middle of the both of them, and you add those into the bead. If the hair was thinner, then you would take both sections that were left out of the last 2 beads and you would kind of clamp them together. I'll have to show you guys another video on how to close it off that way, because I didn't do it this time. So now that it's nice and sealed, this row is complete. It's nice and sturdy to sew on the weft. I'm gonna go ahead and part the next row out. I believe we ended up doing 3 rows into her hair. She has really short hair, or shoulder length hair, so we needed to add more rows in order to blend out her original haircut or length. Sometimes if your client has really long hair and they're not necessarily looking for length in their hair, just fullness, you can just add one row and add a couple of wefts onto that row, or sew on a couple of wefts onto that row. But in this case, we want to blend out her length as much as possible, so we needed to fill it up a little bit more. But once you get the hang of it, it is pretty simple. You just start off on both sides, on each side, and you connect them both in the center. You can create a chain this way. There's so many ways to do this method. And if you do follow me on Instagram at Stylist Success Suite, you can see I do have an IGTV up on the 3 different ways that you can do this method, beaded weft method. You can check it out there. It's a live video that I did. I saved it there so you can see in more detail on the other options to do in the base of this method here. So when you're ready to start sewing, you want to stretch the string out. I usually do a little bit extra just in case, because I don't like to, you really don't want to run out of the thread. So I stretch out my arm as long as I can, and I do it 2 to 3 times, and I loop that thread through the needle. Here's the weft of hair. This is 100% human hair, and it's super yellow and super scary when you see it at first, but it is all going to be beautifully blended at the end. This is a machine sewn hair weft, so it is not hand tied. A lot of people will get confused with hand tied, and they'll think that that pertains to the actual method of the extensions, but that is actually the type of hair extension. So this one was machine made, so they ran it through a sewing machine like tool and sewed all the hair together. What I like about machine wefts is you can cut them at any point. So if you have a very long piece, you can cut it. Hand tied extensions you cannot cut, they will unravel. So I use these little metal clips to hold on the weft onto the row. Those are awesome. I will leave a link below. You can probably get them at Sally's, I'm sure, but super helpful. I like that they're small. And then here it is sewing into the weft. Sometimes I will sew into the actual weft part of it, so that thick piece at the top for security. You don't really want that piece sticking out when the client puts their hair up, so sometimes I'll do that down at the bottom. But once you get really good at this method, you will not need to do that so much. You will learn how to anchor that side. And you always want to go from the top down to the bottom through the hair. And you also want to make sure that when you put that needle in behind, you are going beside the bead that you clamp down. So you can use your finger underneath to kind of feel where that bead is, so that you know where to go. And I'm back stitching right now, so I'm going backward. I feel like the whole part is important, but definitely the corners, because when I first started doing this method, I had a guest come back to me and she said like the sides were popping out, so I needed to fix this. So in order to do that, I started to back stitch. So I'll start the sewing process and then I'll go back a little bit, come back around. Now every time you pull that thread down and through the hair, you'll see here, once you push that needle through the top of the weft, behind or beside the bead underneath, before you tighten it, you want to make sure that string is in between the loop that you made. That's what's going to ensure a secure hold and that's what's gonna ensure this thread from not unravel. You don't want it to unravel, so that's gonna kind of lock that in. Now I'm using a dark thread because I am gonna go in and shadow root this so that it blends in with her roots a little bit more at the end of everything. And this is a continuous process. You just go all the way through to the opposite side. Another thing that I do like to do is I will double thread it, so as soon as I'm done going all the way across, I will go back again just to make sure. I do that sometimes. I did it a lot more in the beginning, and I guess really depending on the client's hair. I have some people with finer hair, and I do like to go back again over it just to make sure it doesn't slip or slide. So it doesn't hurt to do that anyways. Another thing you want to keep in mind is when you begin to stitch, you don't want to have the stitchings too far apart. So you can probably see this angle's a little tricky here, but it's about less than half an inch apart from each other, each stitching. If you decide to just go across once, that's fine. Just make sure it's like a nice secure stitching and they're not so far apart. So that's another reason why you want to have a little bit more beads. You also don't want to really go behind the bead. It's not necessary to do that. It will still hold just as well going on either side of the bead. I think that it's actually going to cause a little bit more tension if you go directly behind the bead. So that's just my opinion, but you can do what you like. And then to anchor this, I go, instead of on top, like going above and then under, I will go underneath to the top and anchor that thread to lock that in at the end. These are my extensions. If you don't know this already, I've been working really hard on finding a vendor to supply some hair extensions that I wanted brand. This was part of that process. I am not going to be going with this vendor, but I was happy to be able to use these on my lovely friend here. The hair is still really great quality. I just want it to be perfect. So here we are, starting the stitching again. I back stitch a bit, and when I say anchor, that just means taking the needle, going underneath, right on the corner of the weft, going underneath and pulling the needle out through the top, and then you'll hold the thread with your finger and kind of guide it over the corner there so that it lays flat. You don't want to ever pull the stitching super tight. It will hurt your guest, and it's just not necessary. So if you, especially if you're afraid that you're tightening that thread too much, that's when you'd probably want to go in and just go stitch across once and then stitch backwards once. So we are going to mix up a beautiful toner for her hair, and you guys are going to see how amazing this blends. I always go in and tap the root first, and like I said, before we even applied these extensions, I did do a foil on her. It was a full foil, and I will post up a video on that if you guys are interested. Just let me know down below. So I go in and I saturate those roots. Extensions are super thick, and so you want to make sure you get all up in there, because if not, you will see some spots. And I like to start from the bottom so it's less tension. I try not to create a lot of tension by pulling those extensions up for too long. So I'll just lift it up, paint under, bring everything down so it's nice and clean. You can also use a comb to kind of comb down that shadow root so it blends better too. So this section of her hair was really warm, and I also didn't go in and foil some of the hair that was in the middle. So what I'm doing, since she has really short hair compared to the length that she has, I'm actually going to drag down that toner, that root shadow, pretty low in this section to make sure I cover the warmth and so that it blends really nicely with the rest of the hair. This was right after we were quarantined. I had her come in and touch up her roots. And so there was a lot of work to do on that hair. So now I'm going in with the rest of her toner. We're going to saturate all of her hair and mush it all in together with the hair extensions so that it blends nicely. That's one reason why I really love toning the hair afterwards. If you're going to be doing any type of root shadow or color on the extensions or your guest hair, apply the extensions first and do it all together. It just processes more evenly, and it just helps with the blend. If your client does not need color, don't go through the hassle of washing it and blow drying it again, or any of that, because it'll take a lot longer and it's not necessary. I would only recommend doing it all together if she's getting colored, or if she really does need a wash, then just wash her in advance, dry it, and then apply the extensions, because then it's gonna just take you a lot longer and it's not necessary. So I just go ahead and rough dry. Anytime you have any type of extensions in your hair, they take a lot longer to dry. It's just extra weight, it's thicker, and the cuticle is sealed, so it just holds in that water a lot more than your natural hair will. Flat iron it. Anytime you do a cut or whenever you go in to blend the hair, your guest's natural hair into the extensions, you want to make sure the hair is nice and straight so that you can make sure that there is no mistakes made. Look at how natural that looks. And Vanessa, I call her Pookie, so if I say that, that's her nickname. Pookie loves this method. She tried tape-ins and she, had fun with it, but it wasn't her favorite. After trying this method, she came back like, I need to keep this in. I love having fuller hair. It feels so natural. It feels so lightweight. So she absolutely loves this method. So I'm just flat ironing her hair, making sure everything blends in nicely with the extensions. This is my favorite flat iron. I will make sure to link it below. You just really need to go pass it over the hair once and it's nice and straight. She didn't want to keep it that long. We wanted to make sure the ends were as full as possible, so we took a couple inches off to try and make it as natural as possible. Creating a few layers to keep it nice and natural, nothing crazy. You don't want to take away from the ends too much. I'm gonna add some curls in. Get her all dolled up. guys, well, thank you for watching. And if you like this video and you enjoyed it, please give me a like, subscribe for more videos like this. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Thank you guys for watching.